Week 14 of the NFL season. That's right, we're almost at the end of the regular season. Pro Football Ireland, our second week of the season in operation. A massive thanks to everyone for their, frankly, unbelievable support last week. To have the numbers on the podcast, on the listeners, it just means so much, folks. So thank you very much. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Michaela Fagan, coming in for week 14 of the NFL season. If you're watching us, I'm wearing black. Everybody else is wearing like Christmas red. I didn't get the memo, but firstly, Mark, that's a lovely Christmas jumper you have on. Are you ready for week 14 of the season? Mark, you're on mute, my friend, and I'm not gonna edit this for the podcast. I'm just gonna, publicly out you as being on mute. So you're on mute. How's it going? You good?
You're right. I was saying I should be on a flight to Chicago, where final destination is Denver this weekend to see Denver Chiefs. Then on Monday, the Cardinals play New England, and then the following week, the Cardinals playing Denver. So those games are so useless. I postponed my flight. So how am I doing? I have 2 weeks off because my holidays were already booked from work. So that's why I was wearing the Christmas jumper. It was my last day of work before Christmas today.
Michaela, last day of work before Christmas, and it's we're sitting in the first week of December. It's nice. Nice for some.
I have 3 days. I have 3 days I have to go back for before Christmas, before I get too much sick. I'm already public enemy number one.
We need to have a conversation off camera about what we're going to do for recording around Christmas. We'll worry about that later on. Michaela, very good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm all good. Not lucky enough like Mark to have 2 weeks off, but only some are so lucky.
Absolutely. Right. Let's just get straight into it. We've obviously got week 14 of the season coming up this week, and it's going to be a really, really interesting one, because again, this is the week where if you're starting to make a run, you got teams like the Steelers that have won 2 in a row. They're still a good way off. You need to try and find a way this week to get over the line. You got the Rams, Raiders, Thursday Night Football, Lions, Vikings, Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Bills, Jets, Cowboys, Texans, Giants, Eagles, Titans, Jags, Broncos, Chiefs, Seahawks, Panthers, Niners against the Bucks, Chargers, Dolphins, and on Monday Night Football is the Cardinals, Patriots. That Chargers, Dolphins Sunday night game was flexed, and next week the Giants against the Commanders has been flexed in the Sunday Night Football. So I won't need a sleeping tablet next week. Let's jump into a different conversation to start off with. I think I've picked this topic this week, and I have picked the Minnesota Vikings, because the Vikings, folks, are honestly, I'm so impressed with the way that they've played over the last few weeks, bar the game against the Cowboys where they got completely shut out. Now, I'm not sure if that, I think that was the week after Munich, Mark, but you look at this Vikings team and they're 10-2, and we are going to talk about the Lions at a different point in this broadcast, but at the time of recording, there's certain bookmakers, certain sport books that are favouring the Lions over the Vikings. For me, there is one element to talk about the Vikings in this game, but for me, I'm just intrigued to see how far this Vikings team can go in the postseason, especially in a very, very open NFC conference.
Yeah, the Vikings are going to get the winner of the NFC's third place battle between Washington and New York. And while that's an entertaining battle right now, because every other team or every other game seems to be too easy to pick almost, and then you see that draw on the weekend. So it's like they're going to almost be overinflated already, because they're not going to get the first round bye, but essentially they should be able to take care of that NFC East team. Like they are good enough for that. It gets tricky because like Kirk Cousins isn't having a fantastic season. Justin Jefferson, I think, is a handful of touchdowns in terms of what he should be getting. I mean, weren't we talking about he should be at least the offensive player of the year coming into the season? Like, look, I'm past the point of just dumping on the Vikings because of their bend don't break attitude. They tweeted that out during the games the other day, and it got under my skin. I was like, why am I letting this get under my skin? We are having some fantastic finishes thanks to them. I think they have 8 wins, maybe it's 9 wins of 8 or fewer points, and you have to give them some credit, because over the last few years it's been heartbreak for those fans, because they've been losing super close games on like field goals have been their worst nightmare over the last 3 seasons. So I think it's a bit of karma has come their way. It's frustrating as fans because you're thinking, why can't that be my team? But at the end of the day, their players are now kind of like used to being able to pull out these wins, and that's something that's important as well. You know, they say good teams always find a way to win, and like your likes of Patrick Peterson and all are so kind of talking or speaking up now all of a sudden. We haven't heard from them for years. And it's because they get that confidence, and that confidence, it's exuding off the field because it's definitely there on the field as well. And I think you can't really take it away from them. Go and beat them.
It's funny, Michaela, because you're starting to hear from guys like Patrick Peterson, as Marcus said there. Nobody can say that the Vikings can't beat a good or a great team. They're 5-2 against teams that have a plus or a .500 record or more, and it shows you the transformation that the head coach Kevin O'Connell's made to this team. They're an exciting team to watch. A lot of people are on and off about Kirk Cousins like a top sometimes, but honestly, they've proved a lot of people wrong so far this season. And in an NFC North where they are running quite clear, they should use these last few weeks to just prepare for the challenges that they're going to have in the first, second, and third weeks of January.
Yeah, I think the Vikings definitely deserve credit. I don't think anyone expected them to be 10-2 at this point of the season, but I think you would look back and you think they were demolished by the Cowboys. And I'm looking at who they've played over the last few weeks, and for me, they bet the Dolphins, but Tua wasn't playing. And then the only other team that then stands out to me that they've beaten that are a good team now are the Bills. So you kind of look at this Vikings team, I'm kind of looking at them like they didn't beat anyone like of note amazingly, and they were picked apart so easily by the Cowboys. But I think I am glad it's the Vikings and not the Packers that are 10-2 and who are going to win the NFC North, because it just makes the NFL interesting. Like, who wants to watch the Packers and Aaron Rodgers win and be like near Super Bowl contenders every year? Like, it's nice to have a team that comes up and surprises everybody. So I definitely think the Vikings deserve the credit they're getting. I think they'll probably go to maybe the divisional round of the playoffs, maybe the NFC Championship, just because the 49ers now have lost their quarterback. But I look back and I think they haven't beaten anyone other than the Bills for me.
And I think, to jump in there, the part that people are annoyed about is the two big teams that they face, the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, within that NFC absolutely hockeyed them. And their only big win came in week 1 when we were all surprised, I suppose, at the time, but it's now no surprise, against the Green Bay Packers. And since then, it's been close game after close game. I think that's just grinding on everyone.
Like 7-point differential as well, and you are both spot on. Like that Cowboys game, it wasn't as if they went to Dallas and got humped. They got humped at home, big style. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on going into the postseason as well. Mark, just finally before we move on, I have to question you on your excellent and controversial power rankings. I've seen a lot of people, especially Bills fans. There's a really, really big Bills fan in Ireland that was not happy with you earlier on. Definitely check out his YouTube channel, folks, if you get a chance. But you've put the Vikings in 7th place ahead of the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins have a pretty good offense.
You have to, because they're so favoured now to get that number 2 seed. You know, like I have Dallas and Philadelphia way out, but the AFC is just so competitive. And when you look at Buffalo versus Kansas City, for instance, Kansas City has one more game against a team currently in a playoff position. Buffalo has 3. Now, Buffalo, I think, could win each of those 3 games, but I suppose my power rankings as well is based over the last, say, 5-game spell. And when you compare to what Buffalo has done, like they've had the losses in there, they've had a ton of interceptions from Josh Allen. It wasn't just based on playing New England. Like if it was just on last week's game, well, then they go up, and Kansas City isn't sitting in number 3, just ahead of Cincinnati. But I do think I've been a fan of Cincinnati. We talked about it on the show last week. You called that upset. We said that Cincinnati is actually a powerhouse in waiting. We got there a week before everyone else, and I was able to put them up in my power ranking. So, like, it's not to say anyone in that top 8. When I do my power rankings, the top 8 like is the most difficult but the most fun, because they're all competitive teams. When I was trying to find space to drop the Ravens down past 12. Put it that way. So no, I definitely see his point, but I'd like to say I've been proved right a few times this year at my power ranking, so I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Michaela, just finally on the Vikings, because we gave them a lot of time this week. You're saying the NFC Championship game. I like that. You could see them if they say if they did get a Dallas coming up against Dallas. You feel like their experience could potentially get them over the line from what they've learned. They have got the experience of getting the close games, so I'm presuming you're just going to say NFC Championship game against the Eagles. That's your prediction, yeah?
Yeah, probably. It could have been the 49ers, but now with the quarterback situation, it's probably going to be the Vikings.
we're going to talk about quarterbacks in a little bit. I think that's actually the topic after the next one, if you can see at the bottom of the screen, folks. And we'll definitely talk about not Brock Lesnar, but Brock Purdy. That's how I remind that guy's name. I keep thinking of Brock Lesnar. It's Brock Purdy. Lovely, lovely
That's
name.
it. That you have me there. That's it. That's how I'm going to do it. Thanks a million.
Right, let's jump into the second topic as we look ahead to week 14 of the NFL season, but also not just look ahead to games where we give picks, but we actually delve into detail around different topics. And one that's really interesting, and I think, Mark, we look at the AFC West and we look at different teams. A lot of, I guess it doesn't matter if you won the West this year or not. There was always going to be teams that were going to be looked down on if they did not win that division. So, for example, having the Broncos sitting with only 3 wins and having the Raiders sitting with 5-7 after 13 weeks is very poor for the Raiders. And I know you wanted us to talk about McDaniels and his potential future there, just generally, but also more so what happens if somebody like Josh Jacobs gets tagged. For me, I've seen a lot of talk about like the fact that the ownership can't afford to get rid of McDaniels. I just don't see how you bring somebody in on that contract from New England and you have to give them over a year for this. Yes, you brought in Davante Adams. Yes, you got a situation there with the quarterback of Derek Carr and his contract situation. There's still movement and wiggle room there. They're not that far off. I know they've been very poor in situations this year, especially in the first few weeks where their offense looked really, really off it. They scored 30 odd points against the Broncos in October. They nearly beat the Chiefs the week after. There have been games where they have been dog awful. But it just looks like a team that's low on confidence. And we've seen last week they get a win, 2 weeks ago against the Seahawks. They get a win last week against the Chargers. They now have confidence. And I'm not saying they're going to go and win every other game this season, but you look at what the games they have ahead. At the time of recording, Thursday Night Football doesn't happen. So you got Thursday night against the Rams, who are struggling. You got the Patriots, who are, I don't want to say it. And then you got the Steelers, who aren't a great football team. You got the Niners without a quarterback at the minute, at the time of recording. And then you finish off against the Chiefs, who could be using that as a mini bye. Surely there is still a lot to play for there, but also as well, it's a key month for McDaniels and his future as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was kind of coming with the Josh McDaniels, because there's a great Raiders fan page, Irish Raiders. I must double check the Twitter. I will by the end of the segment, and I'll come back to it. But and not to take a shot now, but was really calling for McDaniel's head, saying that this appointment was never going to work out. And I think a lot of people, whether they're Raiders fans or otherwise, were feeling like that through X number of games, I suppose, through 7 games of the season. I mean, at one point they had been sitting at 2-7. They've now gone on to win the last 3 in a row. They hadn't had a back-to-back win all season. So it is that feel-good vibe is kind of starting to come through. But look, not all the first-year head coaches are going to work out straight away. Look, they seem to have been particularly poor this year. But when you look at what the Raiders have now in the number 1 running back in the league right now, I think the number 4 is where Davante Adams is sitting at in the wide receiver race. If that was the Dallas Cowboys, we'd be talking about Josh McDaniels being coach of the year to get that production out of 2 players. We have to remember that they were missing Darren Waller and missing Hunter Renfrow for a while as well. So I think that they have finally gotten this thing back on track. The flags have come down. I mean, the first-year head coaches always tend to have more penalty flags come on them than other teams, just as they get used to coaching, I suppose. That has been cleaned up, and I think it's very positive. In the power rankings, I call them the most compelling team in the NFL right now that isn't in a playoff position, because they don't control their own destiny. But with the way that they're playing and as explosive as they are on offense and having the talent, Josh Jacobs has been talked about now in the Offensive Player of the Year race, I think that they could cause real trouble for a lot of teams. And that's why I'd kind of want them in there versus a banged up, I'm not going to say banged up Ravens, a banged up Lamar Jackson team. The New York Jets are good. I suppose, do I want the defense or the offense in a playoff game? I suppose I'm going to be greedy and say I want offense. So I think in terms of this year, they could still make the playoffs. But if they don't, I think, the possibility now is that you do tag Josh Jacobs instead of letting him walk next year, because that would have almost triggered a rebuild. And I know where running backs kind of sit, but when you're coming off an Offensive Player of the Year kind of conversation, I mean, look what happened to Marco Murray with the Philadelphia Eagles a few years back. He did get that. He got there with the Dallas Cowboys. He was the Offensive Player of the Year. The next year he left, and he wasn't the same player with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he was out of the league 2 years later. But Josh Jacobs, I suppose, people were telling you in the likes of fantasy to stay away from going into the season. A couple of weeks ago, we were questioning why was Devontae Adams traded for? It's an absolute waste, even though the connection seemed to have been there. Like, and I want to circle back to what you said about Jet. They barely lost by 1 point to the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost by 2 points to the Tennessee Titans. They lost in that insane overtime game against the Arizona Cardinals. Like, in another world, they're sitting at what, 8-4 right now, 8-5 right now, 8-4. And they are on the way to the playoffs. So I know every team has ifs and buts around wins, but I think short term you could be looking at the playoffs. Long term, I think they don't go into rebuild. They have a lot now to be positive about. The Chandler Jones thing has not worked out. Now he got a sack the other day. I kind of wish we watched Monday Night Football the other day and Carol Nassib had a massive sack at the end and a massive play at the end of that game. Kind of thinking if they kind of stayed with a guy like that, where could they be? Ifs, ands, and buts, but I do like this Raiders team again.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, Carl and Steve had a great game Monday night. He was awesome. I think Brady was the one that actually jumped on him celebrating whenever they got the touchdown at the end. Michaela, you were fortunate enough and lucky enough to be in Vegas in the off season. It's a hell of a facility they have there, isn't it? I think you got the tour of it as well. Super Bowl's there next year. It's going to be fun. I'll have to use your advice then for all the tips around that stadium for recording, and hopefully we'll all be there. Please God. It's been a really interesting year for Raiders because, like, I'm obviously a Broncos fan, so to be honest, Chargers, Raiders, Chiefs, I would look on them probably more so in terms of analysis and just future scope, especially in the off season. And the Raiders were one of the teams at the start of the summer. I did go off my bits when I started looking at previews and stuff, but I was feared whenever they got Devontae Adams, and it's hard to believe that they're sitting where they are now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you look at the Raiders and you see all the star power they brought in, especially in Devontae Adams, and he has that connection with Carr from college. Everyone was probably hoping that they'd be kind of like a Burrow and a Chase, probably not to the same stardom, but good enough like them. And I think that's why people were so disappointed in how they started off the season, because you see Devontae Adams come in, you see Max Crosby, you see Chandler Jones, and you're like, that's a team that can push the Chiefs and the Chargers in that division. And then for them to start off so poorly like they did when they should have won all them games it was kind of like infuriating. You're kind of like, okay, well, the Raiders, they're just bad. But now I'm happy that they're kind of coming around and they've won the last two games and they've beaten the Seahawks and the Chargers, who are over 500 and who are in playoff talks. So it looks like they've come back and gotten a bit of confidence. And who are they playing next? They're playing the Rams. They should beat the Rams because the Rams are just terrible. They don't have a quarterback this year. The Patriots, that could be a flip of a coin, but I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to give it to the Raiders. The Steelers, they should probably beat. And then I think they'll lose the last two games to the Chiefs and whoever else they're playing. I don't have it down.
They've got the Niners on New Year's Day, and then they got the Chiefs the week after. But that last week is always like a anything goes sort of week, especially if the Chiefs are like genuinely Mahomes might not play that week. Like I can't speculate that now.
Yeah, no, you're right. If the Chiefs do rest Mahomes, then they should easily probably beat them. But I about Josh McDaniels, I know they don't have the money to fire him apparently, but I think they're not going to fire him after a year. Like if they win the next three games and lose the last two, they'll be 8-9, which isn't terrible for a first year head coach. Like I think Nathaniel Hackett is more on the chopping block for the Broncos because he has, like we talked about, a really, really high caliber star quarterback in Russell Wilson. But I think Josh McDaniels will definitely get another year. I think just too much pressure was put on him just because they brought in Devontae Adams and they brought in Chandler Jones and all this stuff. But I do think next year they'll kind of be in the playoff contention again. And wouldn't it be fun to see the Raiders in Vegas for the Super Bowl? Because I tell you that I was in Vegas for the Super Bowl last year with the Bengals and the Rams to watch it. And it's so fun walking around Vegas and everybody is in their different jerseys and the Allegiant Stadium is unbelievable. Like it just oozes luxury and money. I absolutely love the stadium.
Hey, would there be any chances of that number 12 going to Vegas if things stay the way they are?
Oh,
Josh
Ooh.
McDaniels, his old buddy, he says that he has
No,
such
I
comfort.
can't see it happening. Could you
And
see it
then
happening?
an offense. I mean, he's a free agent next year. I don't think it's going to be top of his list as San Francisco is there. But like, if he's a free agent, there's only a certain number of teams, and the comfortability factor that he will have with Josh McDaniels, I wouldn't
I
rule
think
it
this
out.
is his last season. I really do.
No, he's not going to go out on a bad kind of. If they don't make the playoffs, he's coming back next year.
Okay. Interesting.
I think he's going to be a bit like Ronaldo. Look, we see what's happening with Ronaldo at the moment. Just can't let it go. It's clear that Brady has the exact same thing going on.
Here, time will tell. Time will tell. I am looking forward to Vegas next year. It's gonna be fun. We will be there in some capacity, so it's gonna be awesome. We'll be in Arizona in 2 months' time as well. So do give us a shout if you do see us. More to come on that in a bit. The one thing I will say, and shout out to my boss, Mr. Oliver Conley at Gridiron, managing editor, for saying this on a recent podcast. I can't remember what the company was, but he had stipulated that Mark Davis, the Raiders owner, made a decent amount of money recently. A very decent amount of money. So much so that he can afford to fly to LA and back to get his haircut, which is such a good haircut. So I'll say no more on that. But I'm one to talk, but I don't get the whole financial remuneration bull. I don't buy it. That being said, the Raiders are the Raiders, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hackett goes in Denver and if Brandon Staley goes in LA, and I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if McDaniels goes in Vegas over the offseason. So time will tell. And we'll get our picks for the weekend, but I have the Broncos and the Chargers both losing this weekend, but I do think the Raiders at the time of recording will win on Thursday Night Football. This is a really interesting topic next. I think this is going to be fun to talk about. So much so that I had it in front of me and now I don't. It was about the quarterback injury situation. And there's a lot of quarterbacks, folks, that have injuries in the league at the minute. But which one is the most, I guess, telling or the most sort of the biggest issue for a team? Is it Jimmy Garoppolo or is it Lamar Jackson? Jimmy Garoppolo is out for the season for broken foot. Lamar Jackson, at the time of recording, very likely to not play at least this week against Pittsburgh. I'll start off here, Mark, if you don't mind, and just put my 2 cents in here. I would say I think the whole Jimmy Garoppolo situation is the bigger deal for San Francisco, because you can see Lamar getting a 2 or 3 week break, and Huntley will move the chains for the Ravens. I just feel that I think it's a big ask. Now, you could see the Niners winning the NFC West and going probably to the NFC Championship game, but will somebody like Brock Purdy, and maybe he'll have this transformational effort and he'll beat the Bucs this weekend, but does somebody like Brock Purdy bring or keep the Niners at that level? People would argue that Jimmy Garoppolo was heavily reliant on his defense, but also Christian McCaffrey and Debo and George Kittle, so maybe it's not so much of an issue. I do feel that it's a bigger issue than Lamar Jackson, and I think the Ravens, if Lamar does not play this weekend, I think the Ravens will lose against the Steelers, which is crazy to think. But what's your thoughts, Mark?
I'm glad you said that the 49ers, because we can make this into a first take or a Shannon versus whatever that program is called. I think it's Lamar, and I'll tell you, you mentioned it there, the defense is good enough for the 49ers that I think they can keep them in games. I mean, look at what we talked about there the other day with Tampa Bay, with its defense being able to keep it in games when there's no offense going. They do have, obviously, Christian McCaffrey. They look. I'm not going to start naming names. We know who's on the offense. The Christian McCaffrey point I was going to mention, we don't know as we recorded this if Baker has been picked up on waivers, so we don't know what it's going to go. But that doesn't make a difference to my thought process. I'm going a quarterbackless San Francisco is better off than the Baltimore Ravens without Lamar, because I think they're I think they're unwatchable, Michael, without Lamar. Because if you look, like, he hasn't been the most accurate passer. He hasn't had to throw for the most amount of yards. It's that he's doing with his feet. He himself has 750 yards on the ground, which is almost as much as the next 3 rushers on Baltimore combined. And when you think that they are a run first team, like, that's crazy. They obviously are missing the Rashad Batemans. Mark Adams is getting back into the fray now, but they've been so poor. Like, I wonder, is it an indictment on John Harbaugh then to say that John Harbaugh without a quarterback can't coach around it, whereas Kyle Shanahan can. But I don't think it's so much that. I kind of wonder, is it on Eric DaCosta, the GM, that he hasn't put enough players on the field? Because Ozzie Newsome would have been, his teams were almost defense first, and he kind of in the mold of what San Francisco is, that they would have been able to survive. But since Ozzie Newsome's gone, I don't think that Eric DaCosta has made the best decisions. Even Wink Martindale being let go as the defensive coordinator, look what he's doing with the New York Giants now. When it comes to Lamar himself, he was in a contract year as well. I think that it kind of messes up his future. He was playing for that, and you're saying that like he might be week to week. That could just be for game planning and stuff to put that into teams' heads as they go down, because you're going to have to. Tyler Huntley is the quarterback now. He's had a stint with the Cardinals. He had a stint with the Seahawks. He wasn't too great for either team. I'm surprised that he was still bouncing around, but I'm kind of like, I don't think they have games to surrender. Not with the way the AFC is. Yet we just talked about the Las Vegas Raiders, whether they can come back into the playoffs is kind of hinging on being able to capitalize off maybe the Jets or maybe the Ravens dropping out of it. Look, it is a tough ask. The Ravens have so many units, but I think the Cincinnati Bengals have taken over the AFC North, so the Ravens are going to be in that wildcard race now, and I just think it's going to be very difficult without Lamar, who everything goes through him. The whole offense is planned around him. They're already down guys. That I'm so sure that I do not want to watch the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens.
It's funny, Michaela, because Tyler Huntley has, I wouldn't say a plethora of weapons around him, but when you can rush the ball with Drake and Gus Edwards, and you can also rush it with Devin Duvernay, and they've been doing that in some small situations over the last few weeks. But you got Mark Andrews and Marcus Robinson as well, Isaiah Likely. He has got some sort of weapons there now. He played 7 games last year, and there was not many touchdowns scored, both passing and rushing, from Huntley. But one thing he does have is he has the athletic speed, the dynamic sort of likeness to what Lamar can do. But it goes into that whole quandary question of, what do you want? Do you want somebody that can just get the ball down the field in terms of throwing it, or do you want a dynamic runner? And I guess that's a big question. And then obviously the whole situation in San Fran with Jimmy G, with Brock Purdy, is going to be intriguing to see what happens in the next few weeks and just the next few weeks of the season. So what's your thoughts if we compare both?
Well, I kind of agree with both of you in a sense that I agree with Michael and think that the 49ers are worse off without Jimmy G. And I agree with Mark in the sense of that you don't want to watch the Ravens if Lamar Jackson's not there. But the biggest takeaway from me is that Jimmy, I forget this nearly every year how good the 49ers are. I have to stop underrating them. Jimmy G and the 49ers, they went to the NFC Championship last season and lost to the Rams. The year before that, they were in the Super Bowl. And then, so Jimmy G is obviously very important to that success of the 49ers in the playoffs. And then I look at Lamar Jackson and I'm kind of like, they can't even get to the AFC Championship game. They're supposed, he was an MVP a couple of years ago. Like he should be getting that Ravens team to that game. And you look at their last kind of playoff run. They didn't get to the playoffs last year, and they've only made the wild card and divisional rounds with Lamar Jackson. So it they probably won't make it past the wild card round if he's out for the rest of the season or for a few weeks. But even if they do make it to the wild card, it looks like the most they'll ever, not ever, but the most they'll go with Lamar is the divisional round, where the 49ers can make it to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. So I think that the 49ers defense will keep them in it. But I wonder if Mayfield goes to the 49ers, will Shanahan and him click, and will he be able to kind of get a spark back? But I definitely think the 49ers are worse off without Jimmy G.
Mark, can I just agree with what Michaela's saying there about Jimmy G? And before you give I think you're giving us a clarification about Huntley.
I put my hand up when I was talking there about Tyler Huntley. I had Brett Huntley in my head, who I said played for the Cardinals and the Seahawks. And I was like, wait, that's not right.
I was going to say, God, did he? I was going to say, Jesus. No, because you were like, he wasn't like, I was like, God, he was all right last year in Baltimore. I was going to say, Jesus.
Who's this clown over here, right? Talk about being on a first take kind of show. You have to come up with opinions that make no sense.
Here, I agree 100%, Michaela, what you're saying about the Niners and Jimmy G, but I will say that Jimmy Garoppolo, lovely looking lad, to be fair to him as well, but He had 5.5 minutes to win his team a Super Bowl, and he completely bricked the bread. To brick the bread 2 years ago. That's not even a term. I am gonna for him though, because you if you look at what happened with Trey Lance, and then obviously Jimmy gets another shot, and the team's done well, and it just sucks for him. But look, time will tell over the next few weeks and months how Brock Purdy does.
How long? Like every season, we seem to be like, Kyle Shanahan, when he gets one quarterback for a whole season, what's it going to look like? Look, the stats going to come up on the Instagram or the Facebook page or the Twitter page of the next few days, because I'm going to have to look into it, because it seems like he's had awful tough luck, because right in the precipice always, it's, Kyle Shanahan's after losing his quarterback. We'll have to wait until next year to see what he could have done.
And the one thing I will say, because I know we're barping on about the Niners here, is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan had to get Trey Lance. They had to get up and get him. They made such a fuss to get him, and they had to get him. So I'm saying nothing. Right, let's jump on this Steelers Ravens game. I know we've talked about the Ravens, so let's talk very quickly about the Steelers. Mark, they've won 2 games in the bounce, and I apologize to Michaela for not bringing up the viral moment that happened on Sunday between Mike Tomlin and a fan. I'm sure if you haven't seen it, basically the fan wanted to say hello to him or something, and he said, "I'm effing working," and he walked on. It was 10 out of 10. Genius stuff.
Michael, I swear to God, I saw that video and thought it was you.
Really?
I thought you were the fan because he had like a beard, and I was just, I don't know what, like a quick glance.
The guy was
like
Spanish. I was like,
what is Michael doing over there? Quick glance, I thought it was you.
Somehow I got home to record a post-game podcast where we didn't know Jimmy G was out for the season. It just top-notch stuff for me. But yeah, thank you very much. Mark, is there any situation here that you can see the Steelers going on the run? 5-7. They are, you're talking 3 games off the top of the AFC North. Lamar Jackson's out. Obviously, the Burrow and the Bengals are rolling, but could they go on a run? Am I crazy to suggest that? Tomlin is trying to at least get to a positive record for his own record's sake.
I was talking this with someone earlier on about how Tomlin is in a position to keep this, what is it, year 20 or year 21 of a 500 or over record. If it was an 8 or a 17 game, whatever week, 16 game schedule, I think he could, because the maximum they could really do is 3. So when you look at who they have left, they might have
Ravens twice, Mark.
They have Ravens twice. That's massive. So if they have the Ravens twice without a quarterback, they can win those 2 games. They have the Panthers. They can definitely get a win there. You don't know what games you're going to get from the Raiders or Browns. That's what I'm saying. Like, they could potentially go 3-1, but I think that 3-2, I guess, pushes them over the limit. But I think, like, for me, what the last few weeks have done is, instead of them being a 10-point underdog, they are now gone to 3 or 4. They've become frisky. They're going to cause a headache. But will they still win? Yeah, I think they will down the stretch. It would have been a more interesting game if Lamar was in. I think I don't have the line. They must be the favourites going in this weekend if he doesn't play, right? So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. They become a frisky team. We've been talking about frisky teams with the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll be talking some Detroit Lions in a minute. So I think they're there, but like, the season's done for them. Like, the 2 wins that they just had were against the Falcons and against the Colts. It's not like they just went to Kansas City or just stole one from Buffalo. That's not the case. So I'm not overawed with Pittsburgh. I think that their own fans know that. I think that they've had some positives the last few weeks, but they're not the Pittsburgh of old that you want to see in the playoffs.
What's your thoughts, Michaela, on the Steelers at the minute?
I think that I would love to see Pickett doing a lot better than he is at the moment. And I think they will, if Lamar's out, which he probably will be, let's be real this week, I think they will beat them. I don't think Tyler Huntley's not near Kenny Pickett, to be honest. Even though, like, he kind of has a similar style set to Lamar's, and he can rush the ball, and that's kind of what the Ravens do. I just think the Steelers will beat them, because I don't think the Ravens are kind of anybody without Lamar Jackson. And then I think they'll beat the Panthers. I don't think they'll beat the Raiders, and they'll probably, if Lamar's back, they'll lose to the Ravens towards the end of the season. And then I think they also have the Browns, which they will probably lose as well. So I don't think they're just kind of like it's not kind of like a team like the Raiders where they're kind of getting red hot against decent teams. Like the Raiders bet the Seahawks, the Raiders bet the Chargers. Like, Michael, you had the Chargers going to the Super Bowl this year. Just gonna throw that back at you.
Here,
But
it could still happen. It could still happen.
it can still happen, but I doubt it at this point.
Mathematically, it can still happen. It's all good.
Yeah, but like Mark said, they didn't beat anyone of note. They bet the Colts. The Colts got. I know the Cowboys are a great team, but the Colts got like demolished against them the other night. And then the other team they bet weren't an amazing team either. So I just I feel kind of meh about the Steelers. I would hopefully I would like to see Pickett kind of take a leap next year and be like definitely 100% be their next guy is the franchise quarterback. And it would obviously make the AFC North so much more interesting, because imagine a Steelers team with their defense, a really good Kyle Pickett against the Browns, the Bengals and Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. That would be a really, really red hot division. But at the moment, I'm just kind of, I'd rather probably watch, no, that's a bit much. I was going to say I'd rather watch paint dry than the Steelers, but just they wouldn't be, they'd probably be one of my last team to watch.
Obviously, with the Rooney family and the historic ties to Ireland, we all love Pittsburgh, and the city is Pittsburgh, and the Steelers as well. And yeah, I'd love to see what you just said there, especially Mark, like about the final running. Let's see what happens over the last few weeks. The Steelers can always seem to find some sort of different gear, but I think this could be the year where it does maybe go down a little bit. Time will tell. Time will tell. Let's penultimate topic here. Let's jump on the Lions very, very quickly. I know we talked about the Vikings, so just quickly on the Lions. The thing that really surprises me, Mark, is they have been fun to watch this year in the offense. They're putting points up for fun in some games, apart from a game against the Patriots and a game against the Cowboys in a 2-week spell there. They should have beat the Bills on Thanksgiving. They have a statement defensive performance and, frankly, a very good defensive performance last week against the Jaguars. They've really turned a corner. And you had people week 7, week 8 calling for Dan Campbell to go at the end of the season. This is a guy that cares about his team, deserves time, and in my opinion, should be there next season. I'm really looking forward to this game on Sunday with the Lions and Vikings.
Yeah, so a few weeks back, we kind of had touched on this topic of which of these teams that isn't going to this playoffs is going to cause a few upsets. And at the time, we thought it was Chicago because of Justin Fields, or Atlanta just because the way that Drake London and Kyle Pitts were kind of coming out. It was the Detroit Lions, and I think everyone had a feel-good vibe around Detroit, but they weren't finishing games, and they needed to learn how to win. And I think they did that. It was Green Bay was the turning point. It was about a month ago now. So what's that? Five weeks ago. So when they got that, they learned how to win. Then they went in. I think they beat Chicago the next week. They beat the Giants after that. They went so close on Thanksgiving to almost beating the Buffalo Bills, and they obviously beat the Jaguars over the weekend. And I think, to me, it was this whole thing that they almost had those upsets. But let's remember at the start of the season as well, Philadelphia, they almost pulled it off against Philadelphia. They had a really high-scoring game, and the defense wasn't able to keep up. So I think that they have been there, but now they're able to turn the top. I mean, who had Jamal Williams having 14 touchdowns through the year? I know DeAndre Swift got a bit injured, but I think they're really frisky. I don't have them. Oh, yeah, sorry. So the next 2 games are the Vikings and the Jets. And it's like the Lions themselves can't go to the playoffs, but they can definitely affect who's going to be going to the playoffs, because the likes of the Jets now can't, they're made with their defense, and they're going to be going against a high-powered offense like that. Look, we saw what happened last week with the Minnesota Vikings, that they were able to touch that New York Jets defense. So Detroit will get a lot of hope from that. Dan Campbell's passion was worth so much, but we didn't think it was worth enough to keep him in a job a few weeks ago. I think they absolutely have something now in Detroit.
I fully agree with what Mark's saying, Michaela. It's a really interesting time for Detroit, because if they're not going to go to the playoffs, they need to use these next 4 or 5 final games to their advantage. You've got 9 months to prepare from then, and unfortunately, we're probably not going to see them in Hard Knocks next year.
No, I have to say I really like the Lions. I think they're my favorite underdog team. You look at they obviously didn't start. No one expected anything from them, and they think they've surprised a few people by the way they played. And I have to say, I like Jared Goff at quarterback for them. I think he's a good leader. And if you look at the stats, he is over 3,000 throwing yards, which I think is 7th amongst quarterbacks. He's 19 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, and I think he's the 6th highest QBR in the league, like 6, and he's behind Geno Smith, he's behind Jalen Hurts, Mahomes. So he's a good quarterback. I think he's a little bit above average, but I like him, and I know the Lions have I think they'll have a top 5 pick from the Rams probably in the draft, and they also have the 15 pick, so they can do a lot of stuff with that. I don't think they should draft a quarterback. I think they could probably use the needs somewhere else. I think Jared Goff is very good, and I think he can actually do something for them. But yeah, they're just such a fun team to watch. They can be really explosive. They can cause some upsets. But I don't think they'll beat the Vikings this week. It could be a close game, maybe only a couple of points in the difference. I think they'll definitely probably beat the Jets and make the Jets struggle for their playoff place even. But I think it's telling that they're favorites against the Vikings. How are the Lions favorites against the Vikings? They're 5-7, and the Vikings are 10-2. Is that a discredit to the Vikings, or is that credit to the Lions? You have to wonder. And I think it's a bit of I think it's a bit both to say a 10-2 team shouldn't be really beaten by a 5-7 team, but the Lions are just so good and fun to watch, and they can clearly score points. Jared Goff can put a lot of points on the board, so I think they're the team to watch next year. I think they can be really, really exciting.
Right, last topic we're going to talk about here before we get our picks for week 14 of the NFL season is Mark's Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray going up against the Patriots in Monday Night Football. That game's in Arizona, Mark, yeah? In Arizona, yes. Looking forward to Arizona in a few weeks' time. Never been to Arizona. I hear it's very, very hot. Is it hot in February, Mark, in Arizona?
I haven't been lucky enough that the season has extended to February for me, but no, I went this time last year and it was weird. I went from like freezing cold, I'm talking Baltic in Chicago, to shorts and t-shirt in Arizona. So that's what it's like in December. It's an oasis, I think.
I will Google it whenever you're talking here in a second. I'll find out, because I am very excited for the start of February. Michaela, you got to get these flights booked high for Arizona. Whatever you do, folks, do not Google the price of accommodation for the Super Bowl or Arizona. It's nuts. Let's look at Arizona now very quickly. Going up against Patriots, Monday Night Football. Very interesting time in New England, Mark. If that wasn't Bill Belichick as the head coach, people will be ripping this team to shreds, and certain quarterbacks that are playing for them, in my opinion, personally. Let's look at Kyler. Obviously, Patrick Peterson saying that nobody cares about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray cares about nobody apart from Kyler Murray. Doesn't care about the head coach. I mean, frankly, I don't care about Cliff Kingsbury. I think Cliff Kingsbury is not fit to be in that position. But that's a discussion for a different podcast. This is a really intriguing game Monday night, isn't it? Like the Patriots and the Cardinals.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I think it is an intriguing game, but I think it's New England's to win, hands down. The Cardinals haven't been able to do too much all year, and they're going to be going against one of the best offenses or defenses in the league. In terms of the comments by Patrick Peterson, former Cardinal, I noticed when we were in London, we asked Patrick Peterson a question, or I asked him about basically traveling to London with the Arizona Cardinals in 2017 and traveling with Minnesota. And he used it to take a shot against the team. It wasn't picked up on, but I noticed as a fan, I was like, oh, why does he always seem to this year if the Cardinals are brought up? So this stemmed then into when the Cardinals played, he made a video game kind of celebration. I don't need to go into the whole history of it, but basically, like, Patrick Peterson has a bone to pick with the Cardinals. He knows that it's really getting under the fan's skin when he goes for Kyler Murray. And I think it's kind of this, like, it's a bad breakup that he thought that the ex-partner would miss him more, and that hasn't happened. I think that he sees the writing on the wall for maybe he doesn't get into the Ring of Honor based on how fans do talk about him. I'm not going to start taking shots at Patrick Peterson. I just think it's a bit transparent that people know when you don't believe what you're saying. And he's been caught doing that over the years. And here it's like what he said about Kyler Murray not being... I get it. As a Cardinals fan, it's tough to watch Kyler Murray. But the Hard Knocks this season, I've watched, the 4 weeks that there's been so far, And he's not as unliked as kind of people make out. He's definitely a tough person to work with. We all know that in the workplace, that there is some people that are tougher to get along with than others. Doesn't mean that there's any hatred there. Like DeAndre Hopkins, Conor Murray has a go at DeAndre Hopkins. It's like, that's not out of disrespect. DeAndre Hopkins is his best weapon. It's just that he's just trying to get better. And then his best friend on the team is Marquise Brown, and they got on like a house on fire. I think, look, I'm a feel for it as well. As a Cardinals fan, I was talking about Conor Murray and I said I don't understand how he's obsessed with video games and not as obsessed with his team. Look, it's a younger generation. We kind of have to get over it or whatever. I think he's still an elite talent, and yeah, chemistry could help him out a bit. But like we saw Tom Brady shouting at his teammates on Monday Night Football. When Conor Murray does it, he gets all the attention, it seems.
Michaela, Call of Duty's been out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks now. You think Kyler Murray has it completed at this point, or what's the?
Yeah, I don't blame Kyler Murray for liking video games. I like video games. Everyone likes video games. I think for me personally, when he started out, and kind of in his second year, I personally think, sorry, Mark, I think Kyler Murray's a little bit overrated. I don't know what it is about him. There's just some people I don't like, or they're like personalities, or he just seemed very serious or something like that, or he doesn't. I never seen him get passionate before, other than like you said when he gave out on the sidelines. But I've never seen him kind of like a passionate, happy. He always, I don't know, maybe he's always trying to remain cool, seem like the cool person. But I do agree with you that I think Patrick Peterson may have said the comment out of, I don't know, like pettiness or something. But then again, it's also kind of like, who would you rather be on, the Cardinals or the Vikings right now? And I think everyone would agree they'd want to play for the Vikings right now. They have a chance at a Super Bowl, where the Cardinals gave Murray this big contract, actually put in the contract that he needs to do homework, had to take that out of the contract because people were like, why did you put that in the contract? And then I think back to just the off season when Murray, we're talking about a bad breakup thing. It was also kind of petty that didn't Murray take everything to do with the Arizona Cardinals out of his social media because they weren't giving him a contract. And now look, he's kind of doing a Russell Wilson. He got the big contract and now he's not playing up to it. I don't think it could be fully a him problem. I don't like Cliff Kingsbury either too much. I think maybe they should probably give Cliff the boot and see if they can bring someone else in who can kind of have a kind of like a stricter kind of, not this drama stuff about Kyler Murray playing video games and stuff, because literally all the stuff on Twitter is just memes of Kyler Murray playing Call of Duty. But I do understand why that annoys people, because you do want the quarterback to be obsessed with the game. He can play Call of Duty in the off season, or like he can play it when they win a game. You want your quarterback to be obsessed, like Tom Brady, when he loses a game, he used to stay in the stadium all night and go over what he done wrong and do his and study and stuff like that. So I do get the dislike for Kyler Murray, but I think that could change if they just maybe got a different head coach and they started playing well again and actually were getting far in the playoffs and not just kind of missing out like they have the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, a reminder that Cliff Kingsbury, folks, couldn't win with Patrick Mahomes in college, and we'll talk about Cliff Kingsbury next week before I get Mark started here. Right, let's get some picks in for this week. A couple of ones that stand out to me is we're all on Pittsburgh beating the Ravens. Michaela has got the Patriots winning, and so has Mark got the Patriots winning on Monday night. I'm the only one picking the Cardinals. And I think I'm the only person picking Michaela is picking the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. That's interesting. Mark, is there any other game or team that takes your pick for picks this week?
That's kind of a funny one. Like, I haven't seen the line yet. Maybe I'm going with all the favorites because the picks out of all the weeks, this kind of seemed a bit easier. And maybe it's because we came off a defining week last week where, good teams are going against one another. We actually had the bye of a few useless teams, which was handy, the Cardinals and the Panthers. And then like the Broncos were the Broncos, the Colts were the Colts. The games kind of seemed relatively straightforward for me. Now, I don't expect any upsets. I'm excited to see the Giants against Philadelphia. Obviously, it's important for the Giants that they do stay in this race, because if they lose to Philadelphia, well, then they'll be on an absolute tie with the Washington Commanders going into that rematch a week later. The Washington Commanders being on a bye, of course.
It's a late bye to have, isn't it, Michaela? Any other game that stands out to you this week?
I think I said in the Monday night review I was going to pick the Bucks over the 49ers, and you guys kind of jumped at me there. Yeah, I'll explain the reasoning behind the obviously, but even if Jimmy G was still there, I think I might slightly go for the 49ers, but definitely now the fact that he's not there, even if they bring in a quarterback like Mayfield, I think Tom Brady is always going to have a chip on his shoulders against the 49ers because they passed on him in the draft. They passed on him in free agency when he left the Patriots. He grew up being a 49ers fan, so he always wants to beat them. And when Tom Brady wants to beat someone, he brings out another part of him, like an extra gear, if you will. So that's why I think the Bucks can definitely beat the 49ers. And then the Chargers, the reasoning behind the Chargers was because even though the Chargers have a worse record than the Dolphins, I think I'm definitely just going off the quarterback situation because Tua didn't start off as hot as Justin Herbert did. So, and when Justin Herbert started in the NFL, he broke the rookie touchdown record. And he's just, everyone really likes Herbert, and he's definitely he's going to be up there with Burrow and Mahomes, I think, and Allen for years to come. So I think, Herbert is going to remind everybody why he was picked over Tua, and why, let's be real, the way Herbert was playing, he was one of the reasons why Tua was being questioned, because Tua didn't start off like him, and people were kind of like, well, is Tua the answer now? So Herbert is going to remind everybody why people were doubting Tua in the first place.
Yeah, you're preaching to the converted over here. I got away with this earlier on the show. I will put my hand up. I also picked the Chargers for the Super Bowl this year because of Justin Herbert. It's like I started watching them. I was paying very close attention to the Chargers this year. They're very lucky with their wins, and they just haven't got the weapons. Like they were killed with injuries, but even without them, it's just they're a painful watch. That Raiders loss the other day was coming a mile away.
And fair play, Michaela. I should have given you that shout out in the picks graphic for the Bucks beating the Niners. Let's see what happens. That is going to be week 14. Really excited for week 14. You can, of course, catch up with this all weekend at NFL Ireland everywhere. Literally everywhere, even on YouTube now as well. Do check us out. We'll be across the action all weekend. Mike McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Michaela Fagan, and really appreciate your time, folks. It's always good to chat to you. And just again, folks, a big thank you to everybody for the support over the first week or so of this. Stunning to be sitting behind around the NFL and the charts is ridiculous. We massively appreciate you. And look, both of you enjoy week 14. Chat to you soon.